Welcome to Roots and Resilience. I am Dr. Tejal.
I am Dr. Nehal. We have had some incredible conversations with inspiring individuals that we feel compelled to share with you all.
Listen with an open mind and an open heart. You never know, you might just pick up a pearl that might spark something in you.
Enjoy. Welcome to Roots and Resilience. We have a very special guest today who has a journey that is truly unique. We have Amy, a 29-year-old from Bournemouth who, after a decade as a beauty therapist, took the ultimate leap and changed paths to become a mature dental student in the North. She was craving more challenges in her job role and wanted to work in an industry that helped people on a much deeper level than just aesthetically. We are so excited to have you here today, Amy, to hear more about your story. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Excellent. So let's roll it back right to the beginning, Amy. Tell us about growing up in Bournemouth. How was that?
I spent the first 19 years of life in Somerset and then was like, no, need more than that. Finished my A levels and had that moment, at sort of 18 where you're like, what do I do with myself? I wasn't sure on university and where to go with my life. And I sort of look back now and think, oh gosh, 18 years old, it's so young to be making those massive decisions. But I thought I'd do a half and half rather than going to university. I thought I'd move somewhere new, move somewhere a bit bigger, went to Bournemouth and started working in beauty. I'd already done sort of academic A levels, but just really wasn't sure where I wanted to go with things. And that was something I could do with just going to college and having some extra training and stuff. And my mum owned a salon, so it seemed just like a natural progression for me to go into beauty. And I loved it. I did, it was a decade long career. It was amazing for me. It taught me so much.
So going back
Wow.
when you were younger, um, did you have, you went all through school, did your A levels, did you at any point like have any kind of ambition or sort of, that internal kind of, oh, I'd like to be this, or oh, I think I find this interesting, or was it just like I really don't know?
It was always, I don't know. And I found it really frustrating because all of my friends growing up, they all knew exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted, one wanted to be a physiotherapist, one wanted to be in psychology. They were so driven. They knew exactly which direction their lives were going in. And as someone who didn't have that, it's really difficult to watch people growing up knowing what their direction is because obviously we get told when we're younger, oh, it doesn't matter, just do what you like and stuff and you'll figure it out. But actually, when you have no direction, you can kind of sometimes end up doing things where you're like, oh, this doesn't make a pathway for me. This gives me no pattern and sort of no direction as to where I'm going. So it was really difficult actually being one of those people that just really had no direction at all. I didn't even have that burning desire to be a beauty therapist. It was very much just I did that because it was a natural progression because my mum was already in that industry. Had
Hmm.
she not been, no idea where I would have ended up, to be honest.
Wow. And what A levels did you do out of interest?
I did biology, psychology, art, and history for my A levels. So
Wow. A real
it was,
mix. Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. So again, no direction. It was kind of keep my options open, but I do think sometimes I maybe kept my options just slightly too open because I really had no direction with what I was learning. I enjoyed all of it though.
But I think to be there's something to be said about also, do you know what, like when you look back, and even when we look back, and even though we went from school straight into dental school, you look back and you're just like, I was thinking about the prospect of being in the profession at the age of 15. That's like nothing. And you're just like, where, it's so early. You've got so little experience, let alone like, life experience or real world
Yeah.
experience. And you're kind of just following this fantasy that somehow you've become exposed to and hoping it works out. But that's really young. And I think there's so many people who genuinely don't know. And what's really interesting now, because my sister and I, we host these monthly coffee mornings, and where we have lots of female colleagues in the profession come together and we spit and talk. And what's been really interesting over the last few months is recognizing that actually there's so many of us now in the profession, but at certain points or different stages, but still haven't got it all figured out, or still not sure where they want their career to go, and they're still kind of doing all this deep thinking to understand where to go. So I commend you for kind of following your journey organically, even though it probably may not have felt at the time, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? And what, you so you fell into therapy, beauty therapy, because you had your mother as I guess a role model in that sector. Um, what did you learn from your time in that being a beauty therapist?
So I'd say the first couple of years, I mean, my mum was amazing, but she absolutely, there was no kind of jumping. There was no jumping through easily. I still did my apprenticeship. I was still very much, apprenticeship wage. I got taught from the very bottom up, which was great because I went through it with girls at college who were wonderful. And I do remember having a conversation with one of my college tutors who was like, you get beauty therapists and you get beauticians. And I just remember at the time being like, I don't really know what she means. But now you do. You have the people who they want to do the sort of more simplistic stuff. They're happy to do it. They don't really take it very seriously at college. Unfortunately, a lot of those girls were sort of shoehorned into it because they maybe didn't have the background of people saying, what about this? But actually I was so lucky. I was in a year of girls who were really driven, really inspirational. They were so sort of interested in that and they really wanted to progress in the industry. So I was really lucky to actually meet people who put me in touch with people who were progressing at different rates and doing more aesthetic things and doing more advanced stuff, which I think, had I been with a different cohort or in a different college, I may not have had those opportunities. So I'm really lucky because had I not come across these people who were doing more aesthetic things or who were doing more sort of the semi-permanent makeup and all of that stuff, I don't necessarily know if I would have realized that those fine motor skills that you need to do something like dentistry and developed those sort of more medical side things. I don't necessarily know whether I would have even thought about going into a like more medical field or more medical industry. So again, it was like you said, following more of an organic pathway. I do feel like I was just kind of lucky that that was the group of people I was with and that was the group of people I sort of went through my journey with. And also with my mum being like, no, no, you'll start from the bottom. You'll do the apprenticeship work, you'll work your way up. Once you've got the foundation, then we'll put you through more courses and stuff. But had she been like, oh, you can go on a whim and do whatever you fancy and you don't have to go through those sort of challenges, I may not have ended up where I ended up, to be honest.
Absolutely. I think there's actually huge value starting bottom up. A, you appreciate it more. B, you learn to graft and you learn to work really hard. And C, like you said, your career, and not just in beauty therapy, any career, any industry, even dentistry, it's who you surround yourself with is so important. They will push you. You want to be around people that push you and inspire you and really make you want to be the best version of yourself. So that's really positive to hear that you had a very enriching experience during your college. So how many years was college then?
It was 3 years in total. I
Okay.
actually started late. So I finished my A levels and then I went to America for 3 months and I spent 3 months with my aunt in Texas, in Austin, which was amazing. And that was when I was like, oh my gosh, I need to come home. I need to be an adult. I need to get a job. I can't stay here indefinitely. So I came home mid-December and I enrolled in college that week that I came home on like the 16th of December. Obviously, I only had a week left before term ended. And they were like, if you can get back mid-December, we can enroll you and you can start in January because I turned 19 in January. And they were like, if you don't get back in time, you'll have to pay for this course. You'll have to pay for the full 3 years because you'll be 19 and out of education. So you won't be entitled to it. So it was a real like rush job. I got home, I went to college the
Mm.
day after I flew back from America and was like, here are my documents. What do you need? Like, I'll sign the paperwork sort of thing. And it was, like I said, it was lucky because my mum was in the industry. She already had sort of links with the people who did the apprenticeship program and stuff. So I was lucky in that respect as well, because had I not known, had I not had that in, I probably would have missed it and I would have had to pay. It's like, I think it's something like £1,000 a year at least or something. So I was really lucky to not have to pay for it and to be able
Were
to go
you
in as education.
were you able to work and study at the same time, or were you purely studying at that
So it
point?
was full apprenticeship. So I think we did, I can't remember now, maybe 1 or 2 days in college, but the rest of it was working on the job, learning at the salon. So it was my mum and the other people working at her salon that were sort of like running me through everything. And it's an interesting thing. Obviously, I had never worked with my mother before, and there have been times over the last decade where we've probably been in each other's faces, just like really on each other, more so than you would be with any other boss. And I do say, word of warning for anybody that I know, working with a parent or a family member is tough, but really, really rewarding in many ways as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. We say that all the time. You really, do you know, it's because with your family, you almost the boundaries go,
Yeah,
which makes
yeah,
it really
absolutely.
difficult when you're in a professional environment and maintaining that professionalism. But no, hats off to you. Well done. That's amazing. And when was the first time you felt a little whisper inside of you saying, "Oh, dentistry"?
Honest, I think it really was COVID. I think that's absolutely, then that's a trigger word for lots of people, but genuinely during COVID, during lockdown, we, I still remember to this day, we were told on the 21st of March that we had to close the salon. And we went in on the Saturday and we were calling people and they were saying, are you coming in? Are you not coming in? What's going on? And it was just this, everybody felt it. It was just this weird up in the air kind of time. And I remember I had a few friends in the dental industry. One of them was a dental therapist. A couple of them were dental nurses. I knew a dental tech. A couple of my clients were dental nurses as well. There seemed to just be a lot of people in dentistry around me at that point in time. And I just remember I had been talking to a good friend of mine about dental therapy or, changing into something like that. And I'd sort of started looking into it. And I was in the supermarket with my mum. And we're both like pushing trolleys around and it's dead because, we're not allowed in the supermarkets. And I'd said to her, I was like, look, I think I'm going to go for it. And she was like, you've got to give me at least a year. I need this time. I rely so heavily on you in the salon. I need this time to get things together. And I was like, yeah, fine. I need to look into access courses and figure out what I need to do. And that was probably when the ball sort of started getting rolling because I really did eke out starting my dental journey. I tiptoed into it very slowly with first discussing it with my mum, then discussing it with my stepdad, and being like, can you discuss it with my mum? Can you broach the topic with her? Gently ease her into this idea of it being like a real thing of me leaving. And then it was, looking into access courses. And then my partner at the time, he was doing a degree. So it's like, right, wait till he finishes his degree and then I'll start my access course. And then I did my foundation course. And so it was a really long, eked out process. But it definitely was during COVID when it really picked up traction. I think prior to that, it was maybe just like like a not really that serious thought that had like I had a moment where I was like, I'm going to go into HR. I just think HR seems like a good job. But I feel like I grew up basing what I wanted to do on the TV programs I was watching. And then as I got older, I was like, no, I'm going to mature. I'm now going to base my wants and desires on what my friends are doing as job roles. So it started off with, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, or do HR. My friend is in HR and she was doing so well from it. And I think when you see people doing well, it really does inspire you to look into those careers.
Mhm.
Luckily, my friends were all great, and I did look into those careers and go, oh no, not for me, not for me.
Mhm. Which is
But
also
then,
it's brave to do as well, to realize actually
yeah,
these things aren't for you. And it's really, really, you should be really proud of yourself because your journey into dentistry, like you said, has been little conversations, baby steps, and you've taken every single little step that has taken to where you are today, which is studying dentistry at university, which is incredible. And it's about you maintaining your commitment to that journey. Did you ever have times where you're like, oh, is this worth it? Should I even do this?
um, I'm I'm probably one of those people who is like annoyingly tenacious and annoyingly kind of like, oh, I've set my mind to it now. You can't dissuade me, which in some instances is not great, but in this instance is probably really good. It's definitely the mindset you need to kind of drag yourself into doing something that is it's hardcore, especially, I obviously said previously about, oh, you're 18, you're so young, you're making the decisions. But my goodness, I look at these 18-year-olds and I think, you're so lucky. You've got no concerns. You're just being 18. You're just doing your degree. That's the only thing you focus on. Doing it as a mature student, focusing on a mortgage, focusing on selling a house, moving to a different part of the country, all of this stuff that you do as an adult. There have been times where if I did not have the stubborn streak in me, I would have dropped out of this. And there's so many things that would have been easier than doing this. So many things I could have, like pathways that would have been so much more simple. Um, but I'm really stubborn. And I was like, well, I've told everyone I'm going to be a dentist now, so I can't not do it. And actually, I do. I more so than moments of thinking, oh my goodness, have I made the right decision? I have moments of thinking, I'm so glad I made this decision. Even through the tears, even through the revision, even through the late nights and all the sort of hard trials, I still think I'm so proud I made this decision and I'm so happy. And I still feel excited about it, which, I think that speaks volumes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Amy, I think tenacity is a trait that can get you really, really far because sometimes you don't have to. Well, one thing, in any vocation, especially in healthcare, you don't have to be the brightest spark. And I'm not saying this in a condescending way, but you've just got to have that grit and determination that you're going to work hard. So
Yeah.
even like medicine as a career, very competitive to get into, but less competitive than dentistry because there's a lot more spaces or places in the country. But often even doctors were telling me, they were like, you just don't have to, don't be so worried about, not if you don't hitting all the top grades. You've just got to want to really work really hard and be ready to work really hard and be prepared to graft. And it really is a, something that I think just relies a lot of internal like drive,
Hmm.
Yeah.
good people skills, being able to talk to people is essential. And also, yeah, that will, that because you can train anybody. You literally can train anybody. And I think I even spoke to an anaesthetist once, and this is probably quite controversial, but I remember him saying that when they're putting somebody to sleep in hospital, that actually he feels like, you can train people to do that without a medical degree. That's what he was claiming. Now, I can't comment any further on that. I've worked in the hospital briefly, but that was sort of, his take on it. So it's really, really exciting that you're on this journey. And actually, I think there's so many people out there. I don't know if you've come across this thing called the sunken cost fallacy. So my sister and I, just as an example, were at the show on the weekend and we left at half time up at the interval because we were just not feeling it. And normally we would have carried on because we'd have been like, oh, we paid for these tickets and, spent all this money and time and getting you just got to stick it out. But we're like, none of us are feeling it. Let's just go and do something that we're actually going to enjoy. So what happens is a lot of people find themselves in jobs and careers and then they've invested time, effort, energy into these things but they internally they know they're not feeling it. They're not feeling it or like some things like, this is not right or it's time for something new, it's time for a challenge. But because they feel like they've invested so much of their life into it, they feel that actually pivoting or making a different decision is just not it is not just justified. They can't justify it. So they just stay doing what they're doing, even though in their hearts of hearts they know it's not right for them. So what would you have to say to people who are in that situation?
I think I can truly understand where they would be coming from, where you're coming from. I totally understand why people would feel that way. I think obviously a decade, not just for myself, but putting time and effort and sort of hard work into a family business. So it wasn't just for me, it wasn't just walking away and making a decision for myself, I knew it was going to impact that business as well. Um, and that was honestly, that was probably a bigger concern for me than my sort of sunken cost as such. But I really genuinely deep down, like you said, I just knew that it wasn't what I wanted. It was never going to enrich me as much as it could. And whilst it was definitely the comfortable decision to make, and it was definitely the sort of easy path to take to just continue plodding along, I think you have to be true to yourself. You have to accept that even though the pathway that you're choosing is harder, and it definitely makes, to a lot of people, absolutely no sense. And you'll have people that will look at you like you're a crazy person. They'll say, why would you give up something you've put a decade into? You've built it, you've worked hard, you have a good reputation. People love coming to see you. You're good at what you do. Why would you give it up? But if you know in your heart of hearts that it's not going to enrich you, a decade is nothing. It's just nothing. In the grand scheme of our lives, of how long we have to work, it's just not enough. Even if you'd done whatever you were doing for 25, 30 years, it's still like, why would you commit to doing something for the rest of your life if it's not right for you? And
Yeah.
I think, a lot of the time, the decision that I made was probably negatively going to impact my mum. It was negatively going to impact her business or our business that we'd built together. It was negatively going to impact the clients that we had together. It was essentially, it was sort of potentially going to negatively impact my partner at the time. We had to leave our house, we had to sell our house, move to the north, all of this stuff. And there were so many reasons for me to not do it. But I think my piece of advice to anybody in this situation is, if there is one good enough reason to do it, then nothing else matters. It just doesn't matter. At the end of the day, my mum will always support me. A person that loves me will always support me. They'll always push me to follow my dreams and stuff. And that should be the same. And I think, really, if you have anybody in your life that isn't being your cheerleader, isn't encouraging that in you, they're probably not the right people to be surrounding yourself by, because I know that fundamentally anybody that cared about me and cared about the rest of my life, despite the decade that I put aside for them, would always encourage this. They would have always told me this is the right thing to do. And I think they would look at me now, 3 years into this journey, and say, "Oh my goodness, you made absolutely the right decision. You could not have picked a better path." And everybody that I speak to now is like, "Oh, you seem so happy," even through the tears whilst I'm revising and whilst I'm kind of worrying about exams and worrying about results and worrying about seeing my first patient or doing my first treatment. They're still like, "But you have that buzz about you. You're so excited." And I think, yeah, if you have even just the slightest inkling, you have to just give it a go.
Yes,
At,
I
at
love
the
that.
end of
I
the
love
day,
that energy.
at the end of the day, worst case scenario, I could have gone back to what I had. It's not like all of that went in the bin when I left. I still see some of my clients now when I go home in the summer and stuff. My mum's business is still thriving. I still have a lovely group of friends and family down in the south. They're all there. If this went terribly wrong, it's not like I couldn't have gone back. I would have had to make some adjustments, but I could have gone back. So it's not sort of definitive. If you make that decision, you've always got that sort of safety net, I think.
Yeah, there's just you summarized that beautifully, Amy, and I think it really came from your heart because you're right, a decade is nothing. I saw a post on Instagram. I follow Gary V. He's like a motivational speaker, and his latest post was like 45 is young. You literally have your whole life ahead of you, and I think as soon as people hit their 30s or 40s, you think, oh goodness, that's it. Like, let's just stick it out, focus on the kids or the family or this, that, and the other. But you really, like you said, need to give yourself time, be true to yourself, and also fulfill your true potential. And I think, Amy, especially when I first met you, you had incredible communication skills. And the fact that you've had a whole decade in beauty shows because you're picking up all these skills that are only just going to help you when you're a dentist. So loads of transferable skills there, which is really, really amazing.
And I love also the conviction that you had to follow that inner voice. Like, I know you did it very mindfully in stages. You didn't kind of just like pick up your bags and leave type thing. But the fact that you had that courage to really listen to it, I think it just goes to show that often, like, your gut instinct or you know, you kind of know what's right for you, and m more often than not. But a lot of the time, we kind of talk ourselves out of it, or we sort of let that doubt creep in and take over, or become very fear driven or fear of the unknown and everything. But when you do follow your true inner voice or your true self, like amazing things, beautiful things unfold. But you have to have that conviction to step into that kind of
And resilience, which is
yes,
really
and yeah,
important.
resilience to stick out, because it's not always going to be easy um, as
So
well.
tell us actually more about being a mature student and going back to university. How did you feel about that? How did you find adjusting?
So I think I didn't really think about the mature student aspect of things. When I first decided to do it, when I first got my place at university, I was sort of like, oh my gosh, I'm worried about the workload. I'm worried about, the money side of things, all of that. Where am I going to live? How am I going to get there? And all of this stuff. Who am I going to meet? And then my first year was a foundation year, and it was just with mature students. So we ranged from about 23 to about 43. So again, it wasn't really, I mean, and mostly sort of late 20s and early 30s, we sort of predominantly sat in that area. So I didn't really feel that much difference meeting these people, going sort of doing this with these people. We were all from different backgrounds, but similar situations. We've had careers, we've given up careers, we gave a lot, and you could see it with the group of people that I went through foundation year with. You could see it in the blood, sweat, and tears that were put into that foundation year. It was not just I did it on a whim. It was people had given up their lives to do this, and you could tell in how much work they were putting in, and the passion that they had behind it. And it was a lovely group of people. There was only about 24 of us, so it was really nice. And I feel like we joke at this point because it was very, very intense. We all joke that, oh, we trauma bonded. You made friends so quickly with these people, because you were sobbing in the car park as, a bunch of 30-year-olds going, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. But I didn't realize how actually it was going to be quite a culture shock going into university with 18-year-olds. That, and I don't think the rest of, there's about five of us who did the foundation year who started dentistry and dental therapy at the same time. And we all say that's really something that you just don't experience in many other areas in your life, going and suddenly being surrounded by 18-year-old students. And our dental school is so tiny. I mean, I think all dental schools aren't massive, but we have like 80 people in our year, and we don't see the other years at all because they're all so busy. So it's yeah, it was interesting. It was very, very interesting adjusting to being around. I still, it makes me laugh now. I was writing notes in class, writing notes on paper, and one of the students turned around to me and she says, "Oh my goodness, you're writing so much. I don't think I could use a pen for that long." And I just remember being like, "What? What do you mean?" She was like, "No, I just type everything." And she just was baffled at the fact I was using a pen and paper. And I've not had an interaction with someone who's just come from A levels, who's done all of their education on iPads and, with Apple pens and all of this stuff. And they'd just looked at me like I was out of the Stone Age. Like, what are you doing with a pen and paper? Why are you carrying a notepad around with you? And little things like that where I was like, this is so funny. They think I'm ancient.
That is hilarious. I mean, I still do everything on paper and I love it. It's
I
just
still go to courses, Amy, with my highlighters.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm that girl, and
you
I
have
just
a
don't know how else
Stabilo
you can do
pulled
it.
out.
I have my
Yeah, yeah.
pencil case, and they're like, "What? Just you need one pen for that iPad." And I'm like, "No, I've got a whole pen." I take my pencil case into my exam, which is mad
Same.
because
What's
it's on a computer, but I still take, I know I've got mine here in my, I still take it with me and I don't need it because it's like
But
on a
it's
computer.
see-through, isn't it? For exams,
Yeah,
we have
for
to have the
exams.
see-through ones. Yeah. No, I honestly believe when I write things down, it somehow just enters my
I
brain.
Yeah, but
completely agree.
we're from a different generation though.
Yeah, we
The
are.
younger generations, they're just so adept with screens and they don't feel the need of having to write things out or highlight things or underline things, or especially physically. They can do it electronically and that
Yeah.
works for them. But then I do believe there is such a thing as neuroplasticity, right? Where if we say if pen and paper was obsolete and we just couldn't get hold of it, that we would retrain our brains and we would make it work. But if it's
Definitely.
what you're used to, what you're comfortable
Yeah.
with, then that's fine, yeah, Amy. You stick to your pen and
You
paper.
do
But
you.
I go into lectures and I've never heard like the clacking of keyboards so much. And it sounds like
It's so
way
annoying.
the
I
clacking of
can't
keyboards.
focus.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never had to deal with this before. I've never seen this many people. And also, what are they writing? And I sit there in a panic going, what are they writing? Why are they not listening? They're just writing everything. When I first started, when I first went in, I was there like in a panic, thinking, oh my gosh, I must be missing something, you know. But where myself and my friends who are my age are listening to the lectures and we're absorbing it, and then we go home and we handwrite our notes and stuff, that works for us. Whereas they are so that I've sort of talked to them before and they've said, you know, no, I need to write all my notes during the lectures because otherwise I can't focus on it and stuff. And it's so it is just an entirely different way. And I had to sort of stay true to myself. I had to not get sucked into the I have to do everything on iPad and I can't be using pen and paper because for a brief second I was, you know, really peer pressured into like, right, I'll make all my notes on an iPad. And after about 3 weeks of doing it, I thought none of this is going in. I don't even know what
Mm.
app I was using. At this point, I couldn't tell you where on my iPad the notes that I wrote in those few weeks were. I just went and redid them. I was like, I just put them all on paper and that'll go back to because it was just too much. I just couldn't I couldn't wrap my head around it. And
Mm.
maybe one day, but not today. Not this
And
year.
that's fine. Pen and paper
Yeah.
for the win.
No, that's fine. We totally get that one. So,
Do you
but
find when you go into the lecture room, do you kind of sit near the front?
No, we're all at the back.
Oh, you would. Oh, you're at the
We
back.
are on the back row, and I'm not sure how we ended up being back. I think it's because the doors enter to the back of the theatre. So we just went directly to the first row of seats, but quite funny because actually no one sits in our seats.
Really?
Yeah, it's our row. It's
That's
our
your
row. And the
room.
funny thing is,
That's so
there are
funny.
people. It's strange, isn't it? How there's only 80 people on our course, but there are still people that we haven't necessarily come across or integrated with because you kind of get put into groups and stuff. And I met a few people where we've been seeing patients and we've been nursing for each other. I met a few people and I said, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, I don't know your name. And we introduced ourselves and stuff. And they went, we know who you are, though. And I was like, oh, why? Well, you sit on the back row. You're the older group, aren't you? And we were like, yes, we're the older
That's
group.
us.
And they
Own
go, yeah,
it.
but
Be
you don't
proud of
look
it.
old, but you're the older group, aren't you? And I was like, oh, yes, we're the older group. But yeah, so we do. We have our back row.
But
no,
you know,
although
so it's so nice actually, having done the foundation year, you've got people that have been through that year with you
Um,
and that you can take forward to the rest of your degree, which is so nice.
yeah, we're really lucky. You know, we are a really good kind of group of girls that they're just a really nice group of people. But I definitely think it's definitely something worth if anybody was going into doing this degree or any degree really as a mature student, if you can reach out to other mature students on your path, I would highly recommend it because there's just something to be said for having other people who, like I said, are truly adulting whilst doing the degree. And that's not to take away, I absolutely know that the 18, 19, 20 year olds, whatever, they've got their own difficulties, their own struggles, and their things to go through, you know, moving home, being away from parents the first time, all of that's really tough. But actually finding a group of people who are like just doing those things that you have to do as an adult, those mundane things that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to vent about the fact that my Hoover's broken or the kids were up at the weekend or, you know, my husband did this or whatever. Having that group of people who just get your background a bit more
hmm.
is so important.
No, no, for
Hmm.
sure. I think it's like when, for example, if you're in the phase of life where you're having your young mom or your new mom and you're having a child, talking to your really good friends who haven't gone through that is probably not going to give you the support that you need. So you need to be
Yeah.
surrounded by people who get it, to give you that kind of emotional support during those challenging times. But Amy, it's been so wonderful talking to you and hearing about your journey. But you clearly have embraced it. You're clearly thriving doing what you're doing, and you've very clearly reaping the benefits of pursuing your inner compass. Is that right
Yeah.
phrase, or is just like your inner,
Yeah,
or
your own compass. Yeah.
yeah, listening to your inner intuition and following that, I think it's just really remarkable, really inspiring, and really kind of emphasizes that if we just take away this um, societal imposed like sort of timelines of how life should pan out, which I feel like sometimes we absorb or imbibe, but there's no kind of foundation to it that you need to hit certain milestones by certain points. And I'm really strongly, like a really strong kind of, I have strong views about this. That actually just do you, just do you,
Yeah.
and just make it, just don't overcomplicate it. And I think a lot of the complicating factors come down because, people feel like, oh, they've failed if they've not, if they haven't hit certain milestones by certain times. And that's terrible because you're still growing, you're still getting life experience that's gonna, you know, that's shaping you into who you're
Yeah.
becoming. So, what is there to feel, bad about? But I think it comes down to surrounding yourself with people who get what you're doing, so you don't necessarily um, kind of beat yourself up about things
Yeah.
No,
unnecessarily.
absolutely. And thank you so much, Amy, for sharing your journey so openly and candidly. I know there's lots of listeners out there who are going to feel inspired after listening to this conversation, inspired to follow that dream, take that path that they thought about but they kind of ignored, and even consider completely pivoting or shifting what they're doing. So thank you. And before we wrap up, if there's one piece of advice, I know you did allude to some advice earlier, but if there was one piece of advice that you do want to give our listeners, what would that be?
Or probably taking on the point that you just made, do not listen to societal norms. It is absolutely fine to do this at any point in your life, whether you're 25, 35, 45, whether you've got three kids or you're still single. And I think also, if you have made this decision and you do have those moments where you think, oh, I am behind, or I'm single or I haven't had kids, that's completely normal. It's absolutely fine. I still have those moments now where I'm like, oh, so and so's just got engaged and I'm, single, doing a degree, have no children, I'm selling a house. But I think that's okay. And I think you just have to take a moment and reflect on what you've achieved and how hard it's been to get here, and just kind of give yourself grace and say, it's okay, it's fine. I'm not where they're at, but I'm where I'm at. And I don't necessarily think other people would have been able to get where I'm at. So that's okay. And just, yeah, give yourself grace and be okay with being on a completely different path to other people.
That is beautifully said. And you're absolutely right. I think what you just said there will resonate with every single one of our listeners. So thank you for saying that. So give yourself grace, guys. Be kind to yourselves and love yourselves a little bit more.
And the dots will join when you look
Yeah.
back. So
Yeah,
have faith
yeah,
in that.
yeah, they will. Excellent. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
Thank you so
Amy.
much for
Thank
having me.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to hit follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and to hit subscribe on YouTube so that you never miss a new one. It really helps if you rate and review the show, and if you found this episode valuable, share it with a friend, family member, or colleague. We appreciate your support and we'll catch you next time. Bye bye.